Nikita. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So you do a lot of things. Actor, activist, dancer. What are you working on right now?
I feel like I'm perpetually working on like 7 different things right now. I am still auditioning as an actor. I wrapped like a pretty great year last year, acting-wise, so that was great.
Yeah, you did.
As an activist, I work or serve on the board of South Asian Americans Leading Together. The acronym is SALT, which is a national civil rights advocacy organization, specifically for South Asian Americans, but also for allied organizations.
How'd you get into that?
Honestly, through like the social justice work that I've done pretty much my whole life, I think. It's interesting because when I look back and how I like got into activism, which feels like such a buzzword that means almost nothing now, I was lucky enough just to be in an experience where I asked a lot of questions, and then I had a lot of opportunity for diversity and inclusion education, and then that led me to more community-based organizations, both when I was in high school, but then also in college, and because of that, it kind of continued to snowball into more involvement in things, and one of those things was South Asian American community work, so that's kind of how that happened.
And I saw that you had created this festival in New York City as well. I'm sure that all kind of ties in together, right?
Yeah. It's funny because I was talking to someone the other day about how like I don't feel like the work that I do in the activism political space is a silo. Like I think that it just falls into everything that I do, right? Especially into acting work because it's so. And one of the reasons I am an artist is because it is intrinsic within being an artist is working in politics and having something to say. But yeah, I founded the first ever South Asian American International Performing Arts Festival in New York, which was called Tamasha at the time. It's now become something else that's growing into an even bigger thing.
And like you were saying, it all kind of ties in together with the acting, right? It's not siloed off. How do you approach auditions or projects that you want to work on? Are you looking at it through the lens of what you're talking about with your activism, or are you kind of also like, oh, I got an audition, and it's kind of, is it a little bit of both?
Oh, Andy, I honestly think about the fact that like how having a conscience makes being in this industry so hard. Because I'm constantly, I think it's the framework with which I view the world. So like there is no way for me to look at an audition or look at a script and not automatically be thinking about not only what it says, but also who's in it, whose story is it telling, and even the ways in which, as an actor, I receive breakdowns for auditions, and even the ways in which we see breakdowns, that brings up questions, right? Like, how is this one character identified? Like, what signifies this one person? And often, if it is tied to an ethnicity, is it dependent on that ethnicity? Is that the only actual definition of this person? Or does it matter if it's ethnicity? And why doesn't it matter, right? Like all those questions are constantly rolling through my head. But it is interesting because now when I read scripts that I'm auditioning for, I'm like constantly being like, okay, that's a token character. Okay, this is the one character that says this line. It feels very formulaic at times. Especially growing up a South Asian American where it's just a very multicultural experience, right? Like my dad grew up in India, my mom actually grew up in London, or right outside of London in the UK, and both of them, and me and all my siblings were born and raised here. Cool. So I think all of that diasporic like experience that I'm coming into the world with just made my view of the world from literally birth just nuanced, always, right? Plus, like when you throw in gender identity and then all the things I studied in addition to that and sexual orientation and everything else, I'd lead you with a lot of questions. And we were lucky enough to go to a school like NYU where like we could study a lot of those things, which was amazing. And then that fuels you into such a like, a need or want, or at least for me, to make a difference and to make a change and also bring that awareness and education even to my parents' experience, to give them language for what they may have experienced. But I read this play recently where that was kind of the dialogue, right? Was like this daughter that is very like academic and like this is how she's understanding the world, and the parents are like, this is just what I lived through, so you can't tell me what I lived through by reading it in a book. And the whole story is so meta because it was a play, but then even within the play, she ends up learning so much about her history just by her grandmother telling her stories about growing up. And it's another reminder about like what we do, the fact that as storytellers, that is the biggest difference we can make. Yeah. Because that's the only way people can really understand another person's experience, another person's life, another person's journey is by literally just hearing the stories that they're telling.
Right. And in your acting, can you talk about some of the acting roles that you had this past year? You said you had a big year.
Yeah, no, but I had a really great year, and I think it also felt particularly wonderful because we were coming out of being alone for so long and not being able to do our thing. Because obviously the year was horrible for so many people, right? Like 2020, we're all experiencing grief, loss, isolation, mental health was probably on the decline for everybody. Like there were so many hard things for people, and I think the thing about being an artist is like, okay, yeah, I can't do my job, I can't make money. That's really hard. That was hard for us being in isolation, but I think being an artist requires, it's just so much feeling, and having nowhere to put that for so long is like really hard. Yeah, like really hard.
It's true.
So I was so excited for like anything that I got, and then coming into 2021, thankfully getting vaccinated and all these beautiful things, like all of that allowed for, I think just like me just remembering that I love to connect. And like, even if that's like a line, 5 lines on something, or like a huge opportunity or something, which I was able to have that full arc. So last year, I was recurring on Lily Singh's late night show on NBC, which was amazing. That was really fun.
That's awesome.
Super collaborative, super fun, like love doing character work. We love sketches. And it was a great way to remember, anytime I do sketches or comedy or anything that's kind of piecemeal, it's just a reminder of okay, we do this for fun. Auditions are super serious, and I love drama work too, but we are here to have fun. Everything we do is to have fun, right? That's why most of us got into it. So that was great. I did an episode of Liza Koshy's show, Liza on Demand, which is on YouTube. And I also did a one-woman show, which was a co-production with East West Players, Hypocrite Theater Company, and Enact Arts, which are 3 different theater companies, all with Asian American focuses. It was also awesome because that co-production probably could have happened in the before times, as I like to refer to, 2020. And I think that it was more likely to happen in a time when everybody's working virtually anyway. So it was cool to be in this national co-production that was all virtual. And I've always wanted to do a one-woman show. I just, again, never wrote one. So it was great to be able to, for someone else to write something and then me be able to do that as a mix of theater and film. So I did that last year. And then I also booked a pilot, which shot in Mexico. And that, I tell you, take me abroad anytime for work. Absolutely. I love traveling, and I don't know if I'll ever have the words of how beautiful it is to have that experience, how lucky I am, how privileged I am to have that experience, and how I continue to want it. And also, it reminds you of, I don't know, those experiences I had growing up where, you just can, the only thing you can focus on for a little bit is that thing. How cool is that? I got to focus on this one character, and then on my days off, I got to explore Mexico safely, because at the time, obviously, COVID was still in the pandemic. And I also speak Spanish. So for me, it was really great to brush up on everything and spend a month there. Right. Yeah, and it's the constant, I don't know if battle's the right word, but of, wanting work. I need to make money in a capitalist society. So I want work. And I think the wealth and variety of work that I was lucky enough to do last year reminded me I do have a say in the stories I get to tell and the work I want to be a part of. Especially when we audition for things like series regulars or things like leads of X, because you're well, how long am I going to be with this journey? How long am I going to experience that? And is that something that is that something I really want to do?
You auditioned for a pilot that maybe will be 1 episode, or you could be doing that role for 10 years.
Yeah.
It could be either way.
Yeah.
And you might not even know it in the moment when you're auditioning for the pilot.
Yeah.
Wow. You have to really be ready for anything. And you're right. It's you have to ask yourself, what am I trying to get out of this situation? I've been thinking about that lately with my own acting career and filmmaking, and how I kind of want to flip things. First, I was going acting first, trying to let that lead my career. And now it's kind of okay, I'm enjoying the filmmaking. I'm enjoying creating the environments for all these other folks, not necessarily for myself too, but just filming these short films and getting to work with all of our friends from NYU and from Universal.
I think those questions are also important, the why. I feel I often say that to people that are just graduating or people I mentor, where it's something that you have to just continue to come back to, especially when you're in it for the long run. And also now that there are amazingly so many forms for you to do the thing. Like, is Broadway your goal? Great. Is film your goal? Great. Is TV your goal? But even within film, TV, and Broadway, there's like so many different things you could do in those worlds. And not even just, I mean, obviously, like, you don't even have to be an actor. You could also be working creatively behind the camera. You could be, there's so many other things. But like, even with the types of shows, the network, like, all those things really do make a difference, I think, to the experience and the story that you're telling. Obviously, I'm talking about on screen, but like, even in the theater world, as we know.
And I think that we do realize that over time, that we can have a career in a lot of different places. And it's hard. I think for actors, especially, some of us go to school, but the point is we spend years auditioning. We think, I've been doing this for years. I have to be successful in this one thing. And everybody has to have their own moment where they decide, well, maybe I can be successful in this slightly different thing.
Right, and also, like, what does success mean? Like, outside of financial stability, that's like kind of the groundbreaker, but so many people have that and still don't find themselves successful or aren't doing the things they want to do. And like, even financial stability in itself, it's like, is that going to bring you joy? Yeah. So
for a while, you were a kickboxing instructor, you've been a dancer. What is movement and fitness? What does that mean to you?
Oh boy. So I was a dancer before I started acting. And I think I come from a culture that's very like music and dance oriented, like very centered, I should say. Obviously food and all the other things that defines a culture. But dance has always been something that I like have treasured. And I sing as well, and I think that led me into musical theater, as it does. And, I have waved my way through including dance in my career. I performed at festivals in New York and choreographed for some things and like been part of more experimental movement-based work. And I knew when I was in college, actually, that I wanted to teach fitness as my day job because I loved moving. And I was like, this is going to be great. That's what I'm going to do. And in the process of like getting my certification, the gym I was working at the time like released a class that was kickboxing oriented, but to the music. It was rhythmic, and I was like, this is like made for me. So then that led me to train to teach boxing as well. And honestly, it's just like super empowering and super wonderful to be able to impart that onto other people. And even though currently, as we're filming this, I'm not doing that right now, it's been a great part of my life. Because I do think this goes back to like, your why in a lot of the things that you do, right? I love being able to inspire people, empower people, and like leave people with something. Yeah. And I think that I didn't realize it until I was teaching that people were really being moved and like leaving with, especially kickboxing and boxing, which really like fills the soul.
Yeah, like out of them.
It really like is empowering for so many people, particularly women and people that aren't cis men. Like, your vehicle may not always be able to stay the same throughout your whole life, but your purpose will always be the same. And I think that's been really helpful for me to apply to anything because I wear so many hats, and I don't always feel like I'm like, well, I want to be, when I'm auditioning right now, right? I'm not on a show at the time in which we're filming this, but who knows by the time you watch this, I don't know. Anyway, but because you're not always, doing that thing that you define as maybe success, how can you continue to feel full and find fulfillment in other things, and also take control of your career and all those things, and be able to find other vehicles where you can continue to feel the same purpose being fulfilled.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good way of looking at our performing careers as a whole. It was really interesting getting to hear about your last year. I hope you enjoyed talking today. I really liked talking to you and hearing about everything you got going on. So we'll be watching closely to see what you do this upcoming year.
Yay! Same here.